Hey guys, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Got the new Wi-Fi installed and it's awesome, so I will probably start doing more lives with you guys. Right now it is storming and hopefully I won't lose power or anything, but we're going to talk a little bit about little Dicky and the Delphi case. Got some I don't know, rearranging going on, they're moving him and there's a new judge and just, craziness that always seems to ensue with these cases. So, we have been talking about the fact that little Dicky didn't have much of a criminal record before this came out, right? Two speeding tickets and a seatbelt violation, I believe. Well, it turns out in June of 2015, deputies responded to a domestic incident at 3 a.m. at his house to keep the peace. But when they got there, they just found him drunk, and his wife took him to a nearby hospital to be evaluated. There was no charges or anything that came out of it. I'm not sure why they were called out in the first place. If it was by the wife, a neighbor, or whatever, he was probably just being drunk and belligerent. I don't know. But other than that, there's nothing out there that he's been caught for. I still don't think this is his first time, that little Dicky got up and said, you know what, I'm gonna go kill 2 girls today. And there's no way. More is going to come out. There's going to be more out there. And now that his face and his name are out there, I know we're going to start hearing more things that this guy did, that how he escalated to this, because there had to be an escalation, right? I mean, you don't just, like I said, wake up one day and, I mean, there's crimes of passion, right? Like, you just snap. But this isn't that kind of case. Like, it's not like, he had a relationship with these girls and they made him mad and he just snapped and killed them. No, it's not like that at all. It's not that kind of a crime at all. So, I kind of want to talk about along those lines, like what I'm thinking, like things that I learned while I was in school about the different mentalities of these killers and how things like this usually come about. Like I said, it doesn't normally start right out the gate like this. There's usually a progression, a building over, could be years, could be, a lifetime. So the category that I think little Dicky would fall into, you could call him maybe like a thrill killer, but I think he fits better in the lust murder category. And that is when you get arousal or fill in the blank, gratification, contingent on the death of a human being. SA doesn't necessarily occur, but they still get that arousal and gratification just from the act of killing. I bring him up a lot, but he is the one that I researched the most. BTK did not SA his victims, but he still was aroused and still got off because of it. And he took pictures of them, posed them and things so he could relive it again later, and it would still arouse him after the fact through the pictures and the memory of like what he had done. So we don't know anything about what happened to the girls, right? Hopefully they were not, but this type of killer, SA is not necessarily a part of it. That might not have factored into it at all. So sometimes their ritual, I guess if you want to call it that, they include activities like removing clothing from the body, and we know that there were items of clothing missing from at least one of the victims. Posing and propping of the body in different positions, and we know from the Ron Logan warrant that they were staged, and they believe that there was some sort of photographic or digital evidence, like maybe a video or whatever, taken of the victims of the scene and probably kept by the perpetrator. Insertion of objects into bodily orifices. Now, that, if you go by the, I don't know how much you guys know about the case, but there was a person that had these texts that supposedly came from someone that was a part of the search party, one of the ones that was there that found the girls, and they had talked about different things like sticks and different things that, you know, may fall into that description. I don't want to get into it too graphically. We don't know if that was done or not. This phenomenon of doing these things is really common among serial killers. It's a signature, if you will. And early on, I think it was Doug Carter, could have been Tobe as well. In the Down the Hill podcast, they talk about there were signatures, and they made it sound like multiple signatures found at the crime scene. Could it have been something along these lines? Even just the staging and the posing, that is a signature. So I'm not saying this guy is a serial killer. I mean, we very well may find out down the road that he is, but it is serial killer type behavior. He may have committed other offenses where he had these signatures, and we will hear about it. It could be CP or CSAM, that he took photos of people staged and posed in this way that, you know, will link back, you know, like this picture that he took matches this crime scene or something. You know, if whatever progressed to this murder, if this was in fact his first actual kill, we don't know. He could have already maybe found his next potential target and may have been working towards another one, a serial killer in the making, if you will. I feel like he probably has killed before, though. I hope they can make the connection, because I just don't feel like this was his first kill. But I mean, I guess it could have been. So the offenders, they make a connection between the murder and their gratification. Like, when they reach that point, nothing's going to satisfy them except the kill. Nothing else that they do, you know, watching them, stalking them, communicating with them, whatever, it's not going to be enough anymore. They have to have that kill, or they're not going to get the gratification that they're seeking. So they usually choose their victims because there's something about them that the offender finds, this is probably not going to be monetized anyway, sexually attractive. The attractive trait might be common among all of the offender's victims, and you don't know what that trait might be. Could it be their hair color, their body type, their age, any number of things, but there's something about their victim type that is attractive to them. And if you find that common trait, then you have what they call the offender's ideal victim type, IVT, ideal victim type. And their victims will fall into that ideal, whatever their idea of ideal is. There could be a whole pool of potential victims out there. Let's say, okay, they were 13 and 14 years old. So, in that community, you have this whole group of 13 and 14-year-old girls, right? If there was something about one of those girls specifically that was his ideal, he might see all of these other 13 and 14-year-old girls. They're not attractive to him because they don't fit his ideal standard. So he's going to pass them by. He doesn't care. He's not interested because they don't have what he's looking for. So once they found a target that is ideal, then that's when they start with maybe stalking or other predatory behaviors before acting out their fantasy on their victim. So with him, I mentioned, he works at CVS. His house was not far from the school. And at CVS, part of what he did was processing pictures, because we know that he processed the pictures for the girls' funerals. So, he has access to watch people in the community just by the nature of his job. He sees these people and he sees these pictures coming through. He can watch the school if that's what, he's into. So it would be easy for him to engage in these behaviors. Maybe he sees one of the kids coming or going from school. Maybe one of them came into the pharmacy for whatever reason with their family or on their own to, get a Dr. Pepper or something. Maybe he saw them in a picture that he processed for a family, whatever, and he locked in on this ideal. And then he can progress from, maybe he would make a copy of the picture. And for a while, maybe that's enough. He can go home to his place like BTK had. It was like a garage or a shed or whatever. Nobody else was allowed in there, kind of thing. We know they searched a shed on this property. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that that's his man cave. That's his shed. And maybe he goes out there and he can look at these pictures. And for a while, that's enough. And then suddenly that's not enough anymore. So he needs to see them. So maybe he follows them, he watches them, drives by their house or things like that. And then if that's not enough at some point, if we want to go into the Kegan Kline connection, we know he started the Anthony Shots profile, but there were more people connected to it that had access to the Dropbox and things like that. And they were using that profile to communicate with underage girls, and we know that they communicated with Libby. So maybe he uses like a catfishing scheme and starts to communicate with his ideal. They're talking back and forth. And for a while, maybe that's enough. He's got the pictures. He knows where they live. He can watch them. And now he's communicating with them. Not as himself, but he's communicating with them. And that's satisfying to him. But as this goes on, they're always going to want more. They're going to want more. And they're going to need to satisfy that fantasy. And in the end, it's control, right? They want to control their victim. And that could be what elevates this. We hear a lot of times, people, they stalk, or they're like peeping toms and things like that before they become a artist, before they SA anybody, before they become a killer. So could it be that kind of a progression with him? Are we going to hear that, he followed young women, that he was seen, frequenting a neighborhood, something like that, maybe nobody filed stalking charges against him, but he could have been doing it. Maybe they noticed him, and maybe he's obviously a good liar. Maybe he lied his way out of it. Like, oh, I know, Joe Smith down the road, and that's why I'm here all the time. Or, it could be anything. So as the offender will have a fantasy that continues to evolve over time and becomes increasingly violent as they struggle to fulfill it, which is what we kind of just talked about. It could start off something fairly minor, something small, like looking at a picture or whatever, and it's just going to evolve. They need more, they need more, they need more, until it gets to that point and they need that control, and it ends like this. The most critical component in the psychological development of a serial killer is violent fantasy, especially in a lust murderer. Sometimes the experience of killing can generate new fantasies of violence, creating a cycle. And then that's where we come up with the serial killer. So, what if when he did this, it was enough? And maybe it didn't send him into a cycle where he needed to do it again and again. Maybe the fact that it didn't go off exactly like he wanted. I feel like he just wanted the one, and there were two. Maybe somehow that messed up the fantasy for him, because he had to deal with that part that he didn't want to have to deal with. Whatever. Could this have deterred him from wanting to do it again? Maybe. Not highly likely. We see cool down periods with people, right? They can kind of keep it under control for a while. But if that need is there, I feel like it probably didn't just... Ooh, it's pouring. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I don't know that that's going to just go away. At some point, it would probably resurface, and he's going to want to recreate it again. So the purpose of the fantasy is to control the victim. Often the killer selects victims to stand as a proxy. This is what bothers me the most, is the proxy idea. Sometimes you will have a killer and their proxy is like, let's say they had something happen in their childhood and it was with their mother or whatever. And they're just they're just killing their mother again and again and again through their murders. With the Stockton serial killer, with all of those victims being Hispanic, I immediately wondered, like, did something happen to him in his past? And it was a Hispanic male. I think his brother or somebody was murdered, and I kind of wonder, was he murdered by a Hispanic male? Is that why he was targeting Hispanic males? You don't know. But the idea of a proxy with little Dicky, the reason it bothers me is this, because we can't forget, we've got Libby here, right? And then we've got little Dicky's daughter. And the similarities, you can't discount them. Now, I don't know, and I'm not implying that he ever did anything inappropriate with his daughter. But his daughter, she grew up, right? She's older than Libby. She grew up and she started her life and she's married and all of this. Was he trying to replace her with his ideal? Is his daughter his ideal? And he wanted to replace her somehow in his life. And is that what drew him to Libby? Because we know that Anthony Schott's profile was talking to Libby, not Abby. Did he expect Libby? But Abby was there too. Was she simply just in the wrong place at the wrong time with her friend? I don't know. That's why it'll be interesting to see what comes out at trial. But this does bother me when you think about the idea of someone being a proxy in their fantasy in the reason that they kill. I keep going back to it and I can't get it out of my mind, and I hope it's not, but it's something that, you have to consider. Put Abby back up here. So it says their fantasies may be fueled by, and I'm just going to say, corn with a P. Corn with a P. And facilitated by alcohol and other causes. And we know he has a problem with alcohol. The domestic, he was drunk. He went to this institution or rehab or whatever because he is an alcoholic. Could that have, between, if there's the connection with the clients that I think there is with the Anthony Schott's profile, we know that's all CSAM. It's CP. If he's viewing that, and then you've got the alcoholism on top of it, was that what led to his fantasies about these young girls? Is that where it all started, was from viewing the C corn with a P? I don't know. But I just kind of wanted to give you a little insight into what may have happened and why I don't think this was his, as I said in the thumbnail, I don't think this is his first rodeo. There's going to be more. Now, will it be more murders? I don't know. But I think he has other offenses out there. I think there's other criminal behavior that will come out. I think something escalated to this, but it doesn't feel like a first kill. It seems thought out, it seems planned, and somehow, he hid in plain sight for almost 6 years. And maybe it was luck, but I think there was some skill there. And he had thought about the staging and everything. He didn't just come up with that on the fly. So I feel like there's going to be more victims out there, either before this or maybe he's done something after and we just don't know yet. But I'm sure that they are looking in surrounding areas, places that he lived before, trying to find anything that fits into the escalation. So, what else has happened? Well, the judge, let's see. I'm going to show you this video first, and then we will look at some documents and talk about the original judge. So here we go with that.
6 o'clock with breaking news. It was just in the last few hours we've discovered new information about the case against the man who now is accused of killing Abby Williams and Libby German in Delphi.
This entire case against Richard Allen is sealed, but 13 News has been fighting to find out how and why those details are being kept secret. Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel joins us live tonight at 6. So, Bob, some of these records are now made public?
Yes, Scott. This is the email investigators sent directly to the judge, the prosecutor, and to state court administrators to get more answers about the arrest of Richard Allen. Just hours after we sent this email, the court decided some of the information being kept secret should be publicly released. We now know court records show Allen's initial bond was set at $20 million. We have an online case summary showing past and upcoming court dates. We have a case number, so the public can now follow details and events in the case. Judge Benjamin Diener granted a request by 13 News to release all those details. And following our questions, the court also posted this notice, setting a date for a public hearing for the judge to determine whether important records in the case will remain under seal. All of that now appears on the state's public court website, where anyone can see it, instead of being hidden like it has been for the past 6 days since charges were first filed. What we still do not have is the detailed probable cause affidavit, which details why police believe Allen is responsible for the deaths of the 2 Delphi girls. That is supposed to be public, and it's still being kept under seal. That will be the focus of the public hearing coming up on November 22nd. The judge says keeping that important document under seal has created a difficult situation for the court. Today, Judge Diener copied 13 News on an email to state court administrators. He wrote, "Just so the world knows, the Carroll Circuit Court consists of me, Benjamin A. Diener, the judge. My court reporter was hired Friday and began Monday. My bailiff answers the phone, has no experience and no knowledge about legal process. Thankfully, there is a court administrator that has experience, but she has duties regarding Carroll Circuit and Carroll Superior Courts. That is it. So, I am begging for some assistance to shield me, the court, from this storm, so that I, the court, can keep running the court." The state court administration is providing guidance to the judge on how to handle all the questions. 13 News is continuing to push for the probable cause affidavit because by state law it is considered a public document. Still lots of information we don't know. For example, bail originally set at $20 million. Now, just a few days ago, the prosecutor said there is no bail. It could be 3 more weeks before we learn more details, including what evidence police uncovered to link Richard Allen to the Delphi murders.
All right, so this judge, right, he sounds a bit scattered, frazzled, overwhelmed. I mean, and let's face it, this is a small town, a small community. They've probably never seen the likes of this case. And, you know, he's got this brand new staff, and he's a bit all over the place with it, right? So, first, let's look at, so this, I'm going to look at it on my phone because I can't see it too well on the screen. So, Tobe Lesenby, the sheriff, had, put in a request to have little Dicky moved. So, you know, he was in the county jail, and they are like, we can't handle this guy. We don't have the resources. And they wanted him moved to the Indiana State Prison System, which he has been. So, Tobe submits this to the judge. It says request by the sheriff of Carroll County, Indiana, to transfer inmate from the custody of the sheriff to the custody of the Indiana Department of Corrections for safekeeping. The undersigned states, I am the duly elected sheriff of Carroll County, Indiana. The aforementioned defendant, Richard Matthew Allen, has been incarcerated since October 26, 2022, initially at the Carroll County Jail, and then transferred to the White County Jail at my request as Sheriff of Carroll County, Indiana. the defendant has been charged in a high-profile case creating potential safety and security concerns because of extensive coverage from an array of various media platforms, both mainstream and social, throughout the state, the United States, and the world. In that the defendant has been charged in said high-profile case, it is felt by the undersigned potential safety and security concerns exist involving not only the defendant, but also jail facilities in Carroll and White counties within the state of Indiana. Because of the aforementioned reasons, as Sheriff of Carroll County, Indiana, I cannot provide the services, attention, or supervision necessary to protect or meet the defendant's needs or to ensure, protect, and guarantee the safety or security of the defendant's staff or facilities. Pursuant to Indiana Code 35-33-11-1, I respectfully request from the court an order approving and directing the transfer of the defendant to the custody of the Indiana Department of Corrections. Said agency has agreed to accept custody of the defendant for safekeeping. As provided by Indiana Code 35-33-11-5, I will be responsible for transporting or for coordinating transportation arrangements with the Indiana Department of Corrections, the defendant to and from their respective facility for further court proceedings. I certify to the best of my knowledge that the information set forth herein is true and correct, and it was signed on the 2nd of November by Tobe Lesenby. So it makes sense to have him moved. And then the judge comes back with this crazy court order regarding moving him. And I was like, I've never read anything written by a judge like this. And I saw lawyers, paralegals, all kinds of people are just like, I can't believe this was written by a judge. I've never seen anything like this. And, well, let's read this. So, this is the court order. It says, on November 2nd, 2022, Tobe H. Lesenby, Sheriff of Carroll County, filed a request by the Sheriff of Carroll County to transfer inmate from Carroll County Jail to the custody of the Indiana Department of Corrections for safekeeping. The court, being duly advised, finds the defendant is an inmate awaiting trial and is in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death, or represents a substantial threat to the safety of others. This finding is not predicated on any acts or alleged acts of the defendant since arrest, rather a toxic and harmful insistence on public information about the defendant and this case. In general, this court has 30 days to rule on any motion that is filed by a party in any case. See Indiana Trial Rule 53.1a. Yet, concurrent to the actual case naturally occurring, this judicial officer keeps getting direct requests from non-parties for public information, claiming that this officer has 7 days or 1 day when hand-delivered to respond to the request or face litigation! ! While this officer is responsible for the entirety of the circuit court docket, it attempts to ignore the maelstrom of interest from the public. It is known that YouTube already hosts content regarding family members of this judicial officer, including photos. The public's bloodlust for information before it exists is extremely dangerous. All public servants administering this action do not feel safe and are not protected. The Carroll County Sheriff has limited resources to conduct its base operations, let alone any duties mandated by our Supreme Court. All defendants and all actions are presumed innocent. All public information will be available the second it exists. None of the family members of public servants are part of this action. All of the public servants are simply people doing their jobs. Most of the public servants are woefully underpaid. Most of the public interest consists of people attempting to raise their status or profit financially. When the public peddles misinformation with reckless abandon, we all are not safe. sorry if you can hear my phone. I've got it on because we are under a tornado watch, and out here in the middle of nowhere, I don't have sirens, so I kind of depend on my phone to keep me safe. Okay. It goes on to say, as far as the public's desire to learn about access to court records, that educational effort cannot be by this officer educating each individual ad hoc whenever they choose to seek public information. These inquiries are inherently disruptive to the operations of the court, as they are wholly outside the operations of the court. As a branch of the Supreme Court, any request for public information about this action should be directed to whomever is the public information coordinator for the courts in general. If there is not such a position, our state may need one. Defendant indicated at the initial hearing an intention to hire private counsel. Defendant is reminded that he must retain counsel within 20 days of the initial hearing because there are deadlines for filing motions and raising defenses, and if those deadlines are missed, the legal issues and defenses that could have been raised will be waived or given up. If defendant is unable to retain counsel of his choosing due to financial indigency, defendant is reminded that he is entitled to court-appointed counsel, and defendant will be examined upon request. The court notes for the public that when defendant appeared for the initial hearing, he was clad in protective gear. That protection was not to protect defendant from the court. That protection was to protect defendant from the public. Until a finding of guilt or a judgment of conviction occurs, in any case, judgment must be reserved and the presumption of innocence must be respected and preserved. Accordingly, pursuant to Indiana Code 35-33-11-1, the court orders the sheriff of Carroll County to transfer defendant to a facility of the Department of Correction designated by the commissioner of the department as suitable for the confinement of defendant, and provided that space is available. So ordered this 3rd day of December, signed by Judge Benjamin Diner. So that was interesting. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little concerned about this judge being the one that was going to handle this trial, because like nothing has even really happened yet and he's already just like, I can't handle all this. But he has since recused himself, and there will be a new judge. And I think that that is great, that, you know, they need a judge that has dealt with a bigger, more prominent trial than this guy probably has. And it's nothing against this guy. It's just, like I said, this is a small town, a small community, and things like this, they just don't see it there. So here is a video. They're talking to Doug Carter, and then they will get into a little bit about the new judge.
Delphi investigation. Is Richard Allen the man arrested for the Delphi murders, the same man captured on one of the victim's cell phones?
ITMA's Richard Essex took the picture of Allen to state police for an explanation.
Allen was charged. The statute that he's charged under, the murder charge, also indicates that to have that charge, he has to have committed another crime, like rape, child molestation, human trafficking, something along that line. Is he charged properly?
He is. And those questions will be answered in due time, and they certainly should come from the prosecutor, not from me.
Right.
But eventually, when that PC is released, it'll be clear.
In 2019, Indiana State Police released a sketch of a man thought to be a suspect in the murder of Abby and Libby. 2 years later, investigators released another sketch of a much younger man.
That guy and that guy, there's a lot of similarities. How did we get from here to here?
Well, I think that, remember, I've said from the very beginning, since 2017, a sketch is a sketch, it's not a photograph. That's the first time I've seen that.
Really?
Yeah. And I've also indicated over time that I think once we get to where we are today, we'll be able to look at the similarities of the two sketches and make a photograph, which will be Richard Allen. So I think there's a little bit of both, and I don't regret the strategy to do what we did.
Since Allen's arrest, Indiana State Police have received more than 300 tips about this case. I asked Carter if they are looking for others.
Is there somebody else out there?
Right now, we've arrested Richard Allen, and that's what the courts have allowed us to do. We are going to be searching for anyone involved in this case until it's over. Mm-hmm. And today's no different than that.
There's been a lot of activity on this today. Kagan Klein, they had 5. The prosecutor dropped or dismissed 5.
I did see that this morning.
Is there any correlation between those charges being dropped and the search that was performed in the Wabash River?
No, absolutely not.
Has he?
I think he was charged with 30 counts. They've dropped 5. He still has 25. So it's important you report that too.
Right.
The case has not been dropped against Keegan Klein.
I asked Superintendent Carter if Klein had been cooperative, and he declined to discuss Klein any further. Now a new judge must decide whether to unseal the probable cause for Richard Allen.
The probable cause, I suspect, is going to answer a lot of questions that I have here and that we talked about on Monday. Will it answer all of our questions? Or is there still...
Remember, this case is 2,100 days old, almost. And the facts in their totality will come out at trial. And not until then. I can appreciate the desire for our citizens to have these questions answered. And my response to that is it will come. It will come. But if any of us said something that would be detrimental to the criminal prosecution of the person or persons that killed Abby and Libby, and I was responsible, you should hold me accountable too.
Staying with iTeam 8 now, the judge in the criminal trial of Richard Allen has stepped down from the case.
The state Supreme Court announced Judge Benjamin Diener's decision earlier this evening. Now, it comes after he lashed out at a public's bloodlust for information in the case. News 8's Drew Blair has more.
Richard Allen, who faces 2 counts of murder in the 2017 killings of Abby Williams and Libby German, has been in the White County Jail since shortly after his first court appearance last week. On Thursday, Carroll County Sheriff Tobe Lesenby asked that Allen be moved to a state prison for safekeeping. He stated that the sheriff's office cannot provide the services, attention, or supervision necessary to ensure, protect, and guarantee the safety or security of the defendant, staff, or facilities. Judge Benjamin Diener granted the request that morning as part of a highly unusual 2-page order that lashed out at attention and media coverage of the case. Diener wrote, "The public's bloodlust for information before it exists is extremely dangerous." He continues with, "All public servants administering this action do not feel safe and are not protected." Diener is the judge who agreed to a prosecution request to seal the probable cause affidavit that outlines the evidence justifying Allen's arrest, including the rare move to keep the information private even after Richard Allen was in custody. Wish TV has filed requests with the court for the affidavit to be made public. That is common with nearly every criminal case in Indiana. In Thursday's order, Diener went on to write, "All public information will be available the second it exists. And when the public peddles misinformation with reckless abandon, we all are not safe." Judge Diener also noted that when Richard Allen appeared in court in an unannounced initial hearing, he was wearing protective gear. Diener says it was to protect the defendant from the public.
Meanwhile, a state Supreme Court spokesperson says the new judge in this case will be Frances Gull. She served as a judge in the Allen County Superior Court since 1997. She was a finalist for the state Supreme Court in 2012 and one of only 5 judges in the state that led a case with cameras in the courtroom. It's unclear what the change will mean for the timeline on deciding whether to make the probable cause affidavit public.
All right, so I think this new judge will be good. She's dealt with court cases with cameras. Now, we don't know if this will be televised. I hope it will be, but we don't know. But she's probably more used to the circus that surrounds a higher profile trial. So I think that was a good move. I don't know what his reason was for recusing himself. I don't really care, but I think it was smart on his behalf that he did that, because he just, like I said, he was already so overwhelmed. So this is the order to appoint the new judge. It says the Honorable Benjamin A. Diner, judge of the Carroll Circuit Court, on his own motion, recuses himself and certifies this matter to the court for appointment of a special judge. And this court, being duly advised, now finds that a special judge should be appointed to hear this matter in the Carroll Circuit Court pursuant to Indiana Criminal Procedure Rule 13D. It is therefore further ordered that the Honorable Francis C. Gull is appointed as special judge to hear this matter in the Carroll Circuit Court. The order vests jurisdiction in Judge Gull pursuant to Indiana Criminal Procedure Rule 13F. An oath of office is not required. Done at Indianapolis, Indiana on 11/3/2022 and signed by Loretta Rush, Chief Justice of Indiana. Like I said, I think that was a very good move. I am convinced that there will have to be a change of venue. I don't know how, honestly, anywhere they're going to get a jury that doesn't know a lot about this case, but right there in Carroll County in the Delphi area, it would be really hard to find an unbiased jury. Sorry, there's just like all this noise, dogs and everything coming in here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a change of venue. Now, in that clip, they talked a little bit about the motion to dismiss 5 charges for Keegan Kline, and I don't know if this was part of his plea agreement when they started doing the search in the river. I don't know, and I do agree with Doug Carter that it's important to remember that he is still charged with 25. I wanted to read you the motion to dismiss those counts, just kind of their explanation. It says, comes now the state of Indiana by Chief Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Peter Diedrichs, and respectfully request certain counts previously filed in the about caption, should probably say above, about caption case of action be dismissed. In support thereof, the state would show the court as follows. 1. On August 19th, 2020, the state of Indiana filed 30 counts against the defendant in the above captioned cause of action. Number 2, the state requests that counts 4, 11, 15, 18, and 24 be dismissed for the reason that after consulting with subject matter experts, it has been determined that there is insufficient evidence to prove said counts beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. Number 3, dismissal of the aforesaid counts is in the best interest of the state. Wherefore, the state requests the court grant this motion, dismiss the counts as indicated herein above, and for all other relief that the court deems to be just and proper. So basically they're saying that they didn't have the evidence to prove that he did those 5 charges. So I'm not sure why, but this coming on the heels of little Dicky's arrest is interesting timing. Excuse me. And I also wanted to mention Becky Patty started a petition on change.org, and she is trying to stop the unsealing of the probable cause document. I think it's because after this long, when they finally have an arrest, they don't want to see anything come out that could potentially hurt the prosecution's case against this guy. So I think to them, that is why it is so important. And for me, as much as I would like the information, I've waited this long. I will wait till the trial if it means justice for the girls. But Becky put this out on her Facebook, It says, okay, everyone, I shared a link to a petition to stop the unsealing of the probable cause document. There is a court date open to the public on November 12th. It is indicated public input will be heard. I would like to have at least 30,000 signatures, if possible, to take into the courtroom that day. Hopefully, the judge will realize many people feel the document should remain sealed. I know that is an awful lot of signatures, but we have 19 days. I feel we can do this. I really could use your help. We need to stop this. And I just want to say, she says November 12th. It's actually the 22nd. It was just a typo on her part. The hearing on unsealing it is the 22nd of November. So that is something that's really important to the family. And I completely understand that they don't want to do anything that might jeopardize this case. And like I said, in the end, you know, we haven't known for this long, and if waiting to hear it at trial brings justice for the two girls, then I'm willing to do that, and we should all be willing to do that, because in the end, it's all about justice for Abby and Libby. So I am going to wrap this up. I need to go finish my chili that I've had cooking, and I want to get off here before the really bad storms hit. So thank you for spending a little bit of your day 2 times with me today. And like I said, we got the new Wi-Fi, so maybe I can start going live more often now. I hope you all have a good evening, a safe evening. Enjoy your weekend. And as always, I will see you all in the next one.